and member states relations at the European Space Agency, and she's going to talk about the EU, European Union, African Union relations, and the march together towards sustainable development goals.
Thank you very much, Zahran. I also take the opportunity to thank the organizers. So Wajdan, thank you so very much. I don't see where you are, but I know you're here somewhere, and Iman as well. Thanks for having invited me. It's an honor to be here. And basically, my talk is really to show you how space is essential, not only for Europe, but also for Africa. I think this morning we had a little touch about that. I will also ask you, Zahran, please, to be kind enough to give me a shout, because I can talk a lot. It's my passion to talk to you about space and sustainable development goals. So when I'm close to the end, 5 minutes before, just do me this sign and I will understand I'll have to go quickly. This presentation will be available to you online. So I'll give it, of course, to the organizers. And you will see it's very full, it's very long, so I will go maybe quickly through some slides. It's just to give you an idea of what is doable in Africa. So it's a tribute to James Webb's Space Telescope, as you can see. Sad that Eric is not with us anymore, because he would have been very proud of seeing this nice picture. And you can recognize, you know, the SDG wheel. So briefly, every one of you know or should know what the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN are. If you don't, shame on you, but there's still some hope. You just have to Google UN SDGs and you will know about them. And it's a very ambitious program the UN has, because it's achieving 17 Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. So 2030 is around the door. Huh? It's really very, very near to us. It's ambitious, and at the same time, it's very noble goals. As you can see, no poverty, zero hunger. So really, it covers a very wide range. And my goal here is to show you how, first, Africa, what are the hot topics I believe in Africa are. And I'm more than happy afterwards if you can come to me and tell me, oh, you know, you've missed that and that, because I'm going to learn. It's really an exchange of experience. I will learn from you as well. So don't hesitate to come and tell me. But I just picked the ones which I believe are really the hot topics. And then I will give you some examples of what is already being done. This is just to open the floor for the panel, to which we will be participating afterwards, to the panel discussion on what are the different initiatives we could have in Africa. So I'll show you what exists already, but we will open the floor on what will be existing in the future, hopefully. So some hotspots, as I told you. Well, in Africa, this map, by the way, comes from the African Development Bank. So you can also go on their webpage. And I really liked it. I really liked it because, as you can see on the African map, you see that you are a rich continent and you should be proud of it. You have a lot to offer. And unfortunately, and here I'm taking the first hotspot, which is energy, as an example. But of course, it's one of very few, of very many, sorry. You have many resources, and even sustainable energy resources, which are not fully exploited. And this is a bit sad. I just took this number from their webpage, that 5 to 7% of the continent's hydroelectric potential are only exploited. Only 5 to 7%. So you see, you have a potential to grow in sustainable development and in sustainable energy production. And again, only 0.6%, I just took those two numbers just to illustrate to you, of its geothermal energy potential. So it represents 60 megawatt out of 14,000. So it's really nothing have been exploited so far. Another problem within, let's say, a kind of issue is the transportation systems of energies, indeed for natural gas, etc., which is not so developed. So then the energy is landlocked within the country. And this is a bit sad as well, because it would ease the exchange of energy within energy resources within Africa. So yes, you have a potential. You have a lot of potential in solar, wind, hydropower, and it's a bit small here. Again, you will have the presentation, so you will be able to read it. But all of this map shows you per country, what are the different potentials: hydroelectric, geothermal, wave energy, wind, etc., etc. So great potential. That was my first message, if you have to just recall one thing. Second hot topics is about health. We all have heard about, many epidemics we went through, and one of them being, of course, COVID recently, which has hit maybe Africa a bit less than Europe, for sure. Because in Africa you live also more outside, and still there were some countries which were hit, but more than anything, Ebola and malaria are hitting the country. The continent. And recently, I know that in Congo and Liberia there was a malaria and Ebola epidemics recently. So this is definitely a matter of concern for you, and space can help in that. And I will show you some examples. Food security is also a topic here. I know that, for example, in Kenya, there are Kenya, Somalia, there are many. I think that's what I again read from the UN webpage, that more than 2 million people are really under a very strong risk of food shortage in Somalia and Kenya. Another topic, people and safety and security. So disaster management, hazards, droughts, but also floods. My colleague here, Pascal Leguet, who will be part of the panel afterwards with me, will be able to give you more details. Again, I have read on some web pages, UN web pages, that unfortunately, since, for example, in East Africa, since maybe 2018, so the last 4 years, it has been raining less than the average in one season. So over 4 years, it has been raining less than the average on one season. So you can imagine how much the droughts are affecting the country, the agriculture, etc. The different countries in East Africa. So the security can be also linked to terrorism, cross-border security. Unfortunately, we know what's happening in Mali, Burkina Faso now. So it's it's definitely a point of concern. And last, I wanted to make also a point on education. There are some remote places, but also in Europe, and I will give you some example. In Europe, there are some remote places where you can't really bring education there. So there are some ways of counteracting these problems by doing e-learning, for example. And I will show you how space, of course, can help in that. And last hotspot I wanted to take you through is probably the resources management. And this, talking globally about resources, it goes from environmental meteorological monitoring. Again, I've told you about the problems we had, for example, in East Africa with the La Nina, this phenomenon which is happening on the Pacific Ocean, on the surface of the Pacific Ocean, which basically temperatures are rising, and it has an effect on the African continent. So you see, everything is linked. So it's not that Africa is on its own. We are all interlinked. There's only one planet. There is no planet B. So we have to take care of our planet all together. So these are some hot topics. Again, ocean, coastal, and marine management. I have some examples in that. Plastic, for example. I'll give you an example afterwards on plastic management, in oceans, how we are unfortunately ruining the ocean fauna and flora. Land management with, of course, agriculture, smart farming, etc. How space can help in that. And of course, we are not, Africa is a fragile continent. It is unfortunately also maybe more fragile than other continents. And climate change does have an effect on Africa, even more than on Europe for the time being. It has some effects on migration. And I will be also giving you some little examples on that, how we can counteract that. And yes, of course, last but not least, rural development and urban planning in African cities, how space could be helping in that. Okay, I'm doing a bit of... advertisement here, guys. So please go and check the SDG catalog, because ESA, the European Space Agency, has been developing a catalog with more than 700 projects for every single SDG. So reducing hunger, zero poverty, good health and well-being for everyone. You can find lots and lots of projects ESA has been doing on that. So just Google SDG ESA, or this is the link. You will have it also in the presentation. But if you just Google SDG ESA, you will get onto the webpage we have been developing. And it's quite cool, I have to say. And all the examples are from this webpage, all the examples I'm going to give you now. So I'm starting with education. So education, first program I would like to share with you is, we've been talking a lot about partnerships during the first panel. I think it is indeed a very, very valuable point. And this is a nice project I would like to share with you, because most of you are very young here. Alcantara means in Arabic, as you know, I mean, for those non-Arabic people here, this means bridge. So we are building bridges. Europe is building bridges thanks to ESA, basically in space, to provide funding and grants for researchers in Africa. So there are some exchanges. Some African PhD students come to Europe for 1-2 years. There might be also in the other direction. I'm quite proud to say that Africa, so it's not only with Africa, it's all across the globe, but I'm quite proud to say that Africa has 10 of 12 studies in Alcantara. So we are still, I mean, you're number one, huh? 10 out of 12 studies and grants and PhDs. So this is quite a cool thing. Of course, they're being given expertise, but also facilities to conduct their experiments. So quite a nice project. Another example in education that we have, and where space is playing a major role, is also to get to rural places, as I told you. So here in Africa, we did a project in South Africa, bringing basically terminals, solar panels, laptops, etc., to a school, a very rural school. And you can see here the little school, you know, with their teachers. They're very happy. We've put also the antennas and so on, and using, of course, Swift broadband on Apps for Africa satellite. This can be implemented wherever we want. I mean, it's just one example we did in South Africa, but if it can inspire you to go somewhere else and to put it in your own country, we have the technology. We can help with it. One class, it's another very nice project with basically we worked, and this is, I don't know if you recall at the beginning of my presentation, I said, you know, it's not only in Africa. Am I still okay this time? Only 5? Okay. Oh my God, I have so many examples to show you, but then you can still see them in the presentation afterwards. This is a cool project because this was first implemented in Europe, in Italy, in a very remote region in Italy, and then in Basilicata. I don't know if you know, but Italy, it's at the end of the shoe of Italy. So, I mean, remote, yes, in a sense. And but indeed, they had no access. They had no access to learning. It was quite difficult to get there. Not many people wanted to go and teach there. Well, we have implemented this project where they had some e-learning at school, and then we had the idea of implementing it as well for refugees in Africa. You know, so that was quite a nice project, because we did it for foreign and unaccompanied minors in African countries. So those minors, those children, were also able to talk to their parents. It was not only for schooling, but also for keeping in touch with their parents who remained at home, etc. So that was a kind of very nice project. Of course, using, again, space has a great value, because we use here Eutelsat K-sat system, K-band, and again, so the users are digital isolated schools, NGO, migrants, as I said. It is very, again, it can be implemented everywhere. So if you feel like, come and talk to me, and I can put you in touch with the people who developed this project. Let me take you through some other examples from the hot topics I mentioned at the beginning. I told you about food security, about resources management, water management, of course, is a topic. So we were quite intelligent enough to put in place this project with the name of an animal in Africa, the only animal which does not exist in Africa, which is the tiger. So it's not me. I didn't choose the name. I'm sorry for that. No, it's a joke, but basically it's a very nice project, Tiger. It unites, it's a partnership. Again, remember partnership. I mean, this is the key. This is the key when you're building a new entity, a new space agency. You have to partner forces, join forces. For the time being, we have 42 African countries who participate to this initiative. 150 water authorities, so it's really at high level. And the idea is really, thanks to Earth observation, to be able to basically predict, analyze what happened if there was a flood, etc. Analyze, thanks to this data, to the sharing of data among countries, analyze what happened, learn from our lessons learned, and don't repeat the failure, or learn from our best practices as well. So it's really all African countries cooperating together to overcome problems in collection, analysis, and use of water. So this is very, very important. Another very nice program, and I'm very happy to show it to you here because this is in Morocco. It's close to Kenitra. And it's what we did basically. So this is interesting because it's not using Earth observation, as a matter of fact. It's using it's using a technology we developed for human exploration. On the ISS, we developed basically to be able to recycle water, because, if you're going to go to Mars, we'll have to recycle water. We'll have to recycle even CO2, everything, to be able to produce our own water, our own food, our own oxygen for long-term missions to Mars. And so this is part of a project called Melissa, which I really adore, but there's another example there. And in a school, in a university, as a matter of fact, in Kenitra, we've put in place this, I don't know if you see it, it's a kind of a little, there are some solar panels, and there's a container with a machine which recycles the water, takes the gray water from the ground, recycles it, and it gives here, there are people you see drinking water from the tap. So not only were the students able to drink water, to get energy from the solar panels as well, but also during the weekend, while the students from the university were at home, the other inhabitants from the cities came, and they were able to take the water, profit from the water. So you were really making the most out of one project. And it's not a big investment, so this can be implemented everywhere. And we've even implemented it in France, to tell you the truth. I don't know if you know about the tennis Roland Garros. Have you heard about Roland Garros? Well, we've implemented it in Roland Garros to recycle gray waters and yellow waters, etc., into shower water. So now Nadal and all the others are showering thanks to our technology. So recycling water into into new water, of course not drinkable, but at least recycling water to shower, etc. Nice project as well. 2 minutes. Can I have another 2 minutes, because we started a bit later? But I'm just so passionate, as you can see. So Melissa is spirulina. Spirulina is very rich in iron, in proteins. And we had a farm in Congo. We developed a farm in Congo because it grows everywhere, spirulina. So it's very rich. It can complement the food. And this was developed again for the ISS, because while we are going to travel to the International Space Station, it's very highly resistant to space radiations. So the astronauts will be able to make it grow very easily, and it will complement their food in a very good way. And we've used it also in Africa. Okay. I talked about climate, so I'm going to go very quickly. This is a very nice project as well on climate change initiative. It's helping basically the international organizations on climate change, the UNFCCC, so the UN organization, to thanks to long-term satellite-based products, like I'm giving here 2 examples, the GEOS, the CEOS, and the GCOS, basically to have a coverage, a mapping of the type of basically land changes, climate changes, impacts, etc. So you have a mapping here which helps basically decision makers in Africa to take the right decisions because they know what's going on and they have the view on it. Okay, another example, I'm going to go quicker because I know there's another panel coming, health, and I would like to give you something about health. This is a very nice example as well. This is during Ebola crisis, during the pandemic in 2015-16. And this little person here is called Felix. It's a real picture. Huh? It's not. We didn't take actors. It's really happened. Basically, as you can see here, we've mounted. It's a portable laboratory. It's called B-Life. B-Life is for life. It's a laboratory. I don't know the real acronym, but the L is for laboratory. It's a portable laboratory, and with an antenna and a little box where basically they take the blood of the person who might be ill. They make a blood analysis, and the results are sent to Europe thanks to a very good connection. So you need telecommunications, as you can imagine, satellite telecommunications and EO as well, Earth observation and navigation. So it's really integrated applications. You need all those applications those technologies to be able to receive as well the information, and the hospital in Europe can tell in a couple of hours if the person is ill or not. So the advantage of that is instead of sending the blood test on a jeep, sending it far away to a hospital, and then having the results after 2 days, in a couple of hours, you can put this little person in quarantine. And then you are saving the whole family, the whole friends, because they play with their friends, etc., of being contaminated. And thanks to this technology, B-Life, which was, as a matter of fact, used again in COVID, during the COVID pandemic, we used it again. So it was implemented in Italy, for example, where I'm living now. It worked very well. And we eradicated Ebola from a whole region in sub-Saharan Africa. Security, I will not give you any I have to stop, I suppose. Yeah, it's time for the other. Security is basically, my colleague will tell you more, but this is an example basically on marine security. It's the automated identification system, which is a system that you have to have today on your boats when you are a captain on the boat. And it's obligatory. It's part of the international conventions. And basically, if a satellite, if the marine coastal authorities don't identify the boat and see that he has switched off, the captain has switched off the AIT, basically, the AIS system, well, then they will basically deduct that it's probably piracy and that what they're having is smuggling, what they're doing in the sea is smuggling. So it helps really to detect piracy. And we used it in the Gulf of Guinea. I mean, we used it. The authorities of Guinea used it to detect boats which were doing piracy. Energy. So I talked about energy. This is a project of dammings. You can imagine that landslides, etc., can affect a dam. And this is for hydroelectric power. It's very, very important to be able, with in situ, of course, you will have in situ sensors, but of course as well, so you can imagine it's all mixed with in situ and at the same time satellite. So satellite positioning, GNSS, but also satellite aperture radar technologies, so Earth observation technologies, to be able to combine everything, the data I have on the ground, plus the satellite data, to predict if there are some landslides, if there might be a failure in the dam, and this can be really tragic. Huh? If a dam is having a problem here, it can be really tragic. So, okay, these are my last slides, and I'm starting now, I promise. Economy is a hot topic for everyone, not only in Africa, but also in Europe. I can tell you now we are having a recession after the pandemic, etc. And we also, well, space can help in economy. And in Africa, it's helping bringing financial transactions to remote places. As you can see here, this in the middle of, I don't know where this picture was taken, but it was really in a remote place as well. And yes, you can still withdraw money there, make some transaction thanks to space, because otherwise it would not be possible. My last project is to help small businesses in Africa as well. And again, we can do that thanks to space and on a very spotty basis, so to say, because you pay as you go the service. So it really helps little companies with less than 10 employees to develop and to also make some transaction of money. So this is definitely also a step forward to help the development of African companies and little and small and medium enterprises. I finish here. You will have this presentation. I'm sorry that I have taken more, but as you know, I'm very passionate about what I took. So I will just close my speech now, and thank you for your time. And again, thank you for the invitation. I hope this was useful.
Thank you, Maria. Let's maybe upload one more time the fact that thanks to space technologies, we've been able to eradicate Ebola in a village. So now we're going to have like a panel discussion in the same scope, about the Europe-Africa bridge to space. Iman is going to moderate, and we're going to have Mrs. Maria Gabriela Sarra again, and Mr. Pascal Leguet. He's a senior advisor to the European Space Agency and the director of security and security coordinator. Unfortunately, we don't have Mrs. Wafa Karim with us today, and we also have Lieutenant Colonel Pedro Costa. He's part of the Defense Liaison officer from the Portuguese Air Force division.
All right, I'll take this. Thank you, Serhan. Thank you, Serhan. Thank you, everyone. So here today, we will have a little talk with distinguished representatives from the EU, the European Union, our neighbors of the north, especially as we're in Morocco now, and we're the bridge, Alcantara, as Miss Maria Gabriela said earlier about the other projects. And we will be talking about all the different partnerships that can happen between both continents. We're close. We do a lot of things together. Miss Gabriela have shown a lot of examples of how we work together, and we continue to work together and inspire each other and work together towards a better future for the SDGs, for Sustainable Development Goals, and for prosperity in general, of not only for Africa, but also for the world, for the European Union and the world. So here with me, I have Lieutenant Pedro Costa. He's from the Portuguese Space Agency, and he's also the defense liaison officer of the Portuguese Space Agency. I have also Miss Maria Gabriela Sarra. No, you got to know her, which is also working very passionate about SDGs and working a lot on them in terms of partnerships within the ESA. And then we have Major General Pascal Leguet, which is a senior advisor on security for ESA. So today I will start by the Major General, and I will have a question about, before security, we will talk about the different potential partnerships that we can have between us, Africa, and the European Space Agency. As we know that you have also worked also in the European Union Satellite Center. You were the director actually in Madrid in 2015. So we would like to know if there is any opportunities of partnership between both continents.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much, Iman, for this introduction of the panel. At the beginning, you said that we speak with the European Union. Just very important point, ESA, the European Space Agency, is not an EU organization. We are cooperating with the European Union, but it's an intergovernmental organization with 22 member states. Just to specify that. About the potential cooperation you mentioned, in fact, Maria Gabriela mentioned already different tools existing to support and to foster this cooperation. An important point: Africa is a priority for ESA, the European Space Agency, and for the European Union as well. Is the first point. In terms of cooperation, we have also other tools I would like to mention now. One is an important tool, GDA, Global Development Assistance. This is 100 million budget. This is for 3 years. It's a way to use Earth observation. To promote the use of Earth observation in different development operations. And it's open to, it's a global partnership. So Africa is, of course, part of the world. And we have this possibility to work through this instrument. It's a thematic approach, thematic areas, but also cross-cutting areas. So it's possible when we have an agreement within the framework of this GDA to define the topics or the challenges you want to take up. And in particular, some security-related topics are possible in this context. Just to mention disaster climate resilience, fragility conflict security, urban sustainability, marine agriculture, clean energy, water resources, for instance. It's not limited again. And just to conclude on this and give you back the floor.
Of course.
Also, I said we are not EU, but I would like to mention this is my past activity at EU level.
Yes.
We have another instrument called the EU Pan-African Project. It's an 82 million euro. And it's also, this project is to promote the use of satellite imagery, connectivity, and different space capacities in particular. That's it at the moment.
Of course. No. Please. No, actually, I wanted to mention that it's EU and ESA. That's just, I guess.
Europe is a good, good wording.
Yes, of course. I just wanted to mention also the EU Satellite Center that I would like to also thank for our connection. So yes. So now, as we're talking about the region, and I have here next to me Lieutenant Pedro Costa. He's from Portugal, and there is a lot of geographical proximity between Morocco and Portugal. So I would like to know, how can the Portuguese Space Agency support the African countries?
Okay, thank you. First, thank you for the invitation. It is a great honor to be here for me and also for Portugal Space. Thank you. Well. And before answer your question, I would like to say.
Please.
Or,
yes, go ahead.
You say something?
No, I would like. Please
Okay,
go ahead.
No, just to say that is important. Your work, the Space Generation Advisory Council, to establishment the bridge between the not just the country Europe and Africa, but all the planet.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for your work. So, well, space is a strategic domain, of course, but mainly for cooperation, and how, in particular, how Portugal Space can establish the bridge with Africa and Africa with Portugal Space. We have some works, some examples. From this year, last October in Ghana, in Ghana, yeah, we have an event, and we we have an event that promotes some European companies in the space sector in Ghana. Today, I think 3 p.m., we will sign a memorandum of understanding with the Egyptian Space Agency, Portugal Space and the Egyptian Space Agency. There are some examples that we are already in cooperation with some countries from Africa. And I think the most important example in the global scale is inside the CPLP. We want to boost space vector in CPLP. Some countries that speak in Portuguese language, like Angola, Mozambique, Cabo Verde, Guinea-Bissau, Guinea Equatorial, but also Brazil and East Timor. We can support cooperation on the global scale. The cooperation is very important, not just for European and African, but for all the world. Thank you.
Of course, thank you so much. Of course, I mean, cooperation is the key in the space industry, and it's a very small word, so everyone knows everyone. But also, there's a lot of. It's always fruitful to actually partner and go ahead and further. This is how we do it also with the SDGs and programs such as Copernicus, with that which are not only useful now for Europe but for the whole world in all the all the levels. That's why I would like to ask Ms. Maria Gabriela about how can programs such as Copernicus help us, Africa and the European Union, to achieve the SDGs.
Thank you, Iman. First, I would like to say that I feel very much insecurity here because on my left, I have a lieutenant colonel. On my right, I have a major general. So I don't know if I should feel secure or if I should be scared of what I'm going to say. So
just
I feel secure. Okay. Before, just one thing, Iman, is you're talking about Copernicus, but as I tried to show you in my slides, it's not only Earth observation. Copernicus is Earth observation, one of our Earth observation programs that we are doing for the European Union, for the European Commission, but we are managing it. ESA has been developing it. So there is also all the applications, and I tried to show it in my slides, that all the applications using telecommunications, using navigation, positioning, etc., this is key. It's an integrated application which will lead to success. It's not only Earth observation. Earth observation will help you just to measure if your KPIs, your key performance indicators, okay? So for when I'm trying to achieve the SDG, zero hunger, etc., for every single SDG, for those who don't know, you have some targets to achieve because they're very global, you know, like no poverty, zero hunger. How do I achieve no poverty? So these are, you cascade them down into goals. And for every single little goal, you measure it with a key performance indicator, okay? And to measure that, of course, you can use Earth observation. But to achieve the SDG, you need an application. As I showed you, for example, in Kenitra, where I had this machine transforming, you know, gray water into potable water, etc. So I think indeed, to answer your question, how are we going to do it? I would like first to say why we should achieve it. It's because Africa, as I said before, I mean, if you read the reports of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, which is a UN organization, you will see that they really put Africa on the front scene, saying that Africa is a very fragile continent. You are going to be hit by climate change much more, or at least before Europe is going to be hit. So you have to react even earlier than we have to. So because of this fragility, I think and you can start doing the things right instead of doing the same mistakes as we did in Europe or on other continents. Do the things right from the start. And how to do that? Well, partnerships, as you said, my dear Iman, and as you said also, Professor, partnerships with other space agencies, partnerships as well with scientific institutions, of course. But as well, I think something which I would personally think how to really achieve these SDGs is really by convincing the people, because not everyone is convinced. You mostly, in general, look at the numbers and at the finances and at the economy of a country. You don't really look at sustainability.
True.
And unfortunately, again, I know that when you are in a development, let's say, engine mode, you don't really always think. And if you look, for example, at what's happening in China now after the COP27, well, of course, they say, listen, hey, we're not producing so much if you look at what you are producing in Europe and in the States, some years ago. So I can understand this message. Nevertheless, I think we should capitalize and start convincing, really educating people from the really start the low level, let's say. And I just would like to mention one little example. It's like I have a very dear professor who is, because I lecture from time to time in my former engineering school in Paris, and she came to Morocco, to close to Essaouira. She was invited by her friend who is Moroccan, and they realized there was a lot of plastic on the beaches. And she and her children, pulling the plastic out. Then the family who invited them, the children were looking at them saying, okay, we're going to help you. And then the neighbors starting watching them and started helping them. And now Iman, because I contacted Iman and Amal as well, Amal Layashi, whom I don't know if she's here, maybe she's not back again, but who works at the CRTS, the Centre Royal de Télédétection Spatiale. I asked her to basically to give me a contact in the Mohammed VI Foundation.
Yes.
And now it's really going to be a project. So my advice would be start locally, convince people and grow, and it will grow. If it makes sense, your project will grow. So this is how you will achieve the SDGs. It's not by government saying, okay, we should do that.
Yes.
I mean, you might not convince the people.
Thank you.
That's it. Sorry if I was too long.
No,
Again,
no.
I speak too
Actually, I
much.
was about to ask you about how we can take a part of those initiatives, but this is a good tip that you just mentioned now. Thank you for thinking like me, for understanding me before I talk. So, okay, thank you so much, Maria Gabriela. So we talked about the SDGs, but there's something that is quite important for us to be a prosperous continent, which is security. And as it is important, I would like to ask Major General Pascal Huguet about how can we cooperate in terms of security to achieve a common prosperity between both continents and even internationally. But as we're talking about Africa, we would like to know about here in Africa.
Okay, thanks a lot, Iman. Just if I may, you mentioned Copernicus before. To tell you that you know Copernicus, it's an Earth observation system consisting in 6 families of satellites, the satellites Sentinels, and there is a data policy defined by the European Union. It's a full, open, and free access to this data. So it's possible for you. You use a Sentinel hub. You go on the internet, and you have access to the data and to use this data. And we have, at the moment, we propose 6 services, Copernicus services. We have land, marine, atmosphere, emergency, security, and one is missing, is climate as well, is part of this scope of the 6 services. Just important for you to know that it's a very open system and you have access to these capacities. About security. To say first that the security notion is a very flexible notion. What is security? I'm sure that if we ask you, we are almost 50 people in the room. If we ask you the definition of security, we have 50 different definitions. Yeah. Basically today, at ESA level, we use a very general definition. Security means to protect the citizens, to protect our essential activities, our vital supplies, also to protect our national fundamental values. This is basically the definition we use. So it's a very large notion. So it's the first point. Basically, for me, the important aspect of security is the reactivity, to react in due time when there is a crisis somewhere in the world. And we have to make a distinction between three phases, 3 steps. The first is what we call we call that anticipation. So it's a way to monitor on a regular basis some areas in the world to detect a possible change an abnormal situation to anticipate and to do something. If we cannot anticipate, we have the second part, the reactivity. You don't know something is suddenly happening, and you have to react. And for that, we need to have very reactive systems from the sensor to the end users, and to optimize each step from the sensor to data collection, data transmission, data transformation, and to reach the end users in due time to support its needs. At the moment, we are working with the firemen, with the Coast Guard, with NGOs, with the different actors on the ground to understand exactly their needs. We consider these actors as security actors to support them. And there is the third phase of this security cycle: anticipation, reaction, and also recovery. When something happened, we have now to restore, to rebuild capacity, systems, and activities in the proper way. And space is, of course, a decisive element in this context. Another important point, if I made just a technical point, you tell me if I'm too long and too talkative to stop. What is important is not to have access only to data, to access to raw data. It's the capacity again to transform this data into actionable intelligence, actionable information for the end users, because the end users, the long list we can imagine, the user communities are not necessarily familiar with space capacities, with space data, products, and services. We need to help them to use these capacities in a proper way. This is another aspect. Also, you mentioned at the beginning, Iman, the fact that we consider the continent, the scale of a continent. It's of course very difficult, very complicated to collect data over Africa on a daily basis. It's simply impossible because we have not enough systems in orbit to collect data. What is important is to be in a position to detect again an abnormal activity somewhere, and then to focus on the specific area where we detected something not normal. Just to conclude on this, the fact that about cooperation between Africa and Europe, what is important to say is the fact that we have common threats. We have exactly the same threats in terms of floods, droughts, fires, viruses, disease. We have a long list of terrorism we mentioned, etc. We have exactly the same problems in Europe and in Africa and other continents as well. So there is the substance to cooperate together and to use space capacities to face these different challenging situations. I mentioned access to data, products, and services. Copernicus is a good example, but also in terms of training. It's very important to develop a common culture of use of space capacities through training, through education, and also Maria Gabriela mentioned some of them. And also, just the last point to mention that Earth observation capacities are not enough, are not sufficient to do something. We need also to combine, to merge Earth observation or satellite data with other sources, open sources, for instance, other signal. You mentioned AIS, the automated identification system, also to use this data to build a general picture of the situation. This is basically what I wanted to say about regarding your question. Thanks.
Thank you so much, General. Now a question, it's kind of the same, to Lieutenant Costa, and it is about how can the geographic proximity, especially in the Mediterranean basin of the continents, optimize the use of satellite data to prevent security risks? Okay. I have a small presentation, is a promotional video, but I think this supports the answer to the question. Okay. Can we see the video? The video is on this computer. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Why this video is important? Because we talk about the Mediterranean. We have in this area similar problems. So the solution maybe is the same. And again,
Portugal is a country of dreamers.
No problem. Thank you.
You can put to the play. Yeah.
Whose dreams never cease, of explorers who aspire to reach further. Ferdinand Magellan's circumnavigation is matched by man's arrival on the moon.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Portugal was at the forefront of the evolution of astronomy and navigation instruments, connecting us deeper to the planet we inhabit. Today, space is what motivates us, and exploring it gives us technology that we use daily in schools, agriculture, civil protection services, and many others. Space is in our aspirations. Space is what unites us, and at the Portuguese Space Agency, we want to make Portugal an actor of change, promote space as the home we all belong to, one we must protect. The oceans, 70% of our planet Earth, are a precious resource that now, more than ever, we must take care of. The Atlantic constellation will allow us to comprehend, preserve, and enjoy the Atlantic, promoting sustainability and knowledge, bringing Portugal closer to many other nations with their roots in the sea. The digital planet supports the creation of a multi-platform of Earth observation data. Creating an ecosystem of connectivity through quantum technology will complement global growth by contributing to the development of the Atlantic and the outermost regions. We want to lead innovation using projects such as the Santa Maria Spaceport and Space Rider in Azores. We promote a scientific culture based on technology, research and development among young people. In 2020, we challenged university students to launch rockets in Portugal in the first European competition of its kind, the European Rocketry Challenge, EUROC, a competition with a future in Europe and the world. Since 2000, we have participated in missions of the European Space Agency, where we are increasingly present. Our contribution involves the sustainability of space operations, the cleaning up of our planet and of space, the knowledge of the universe we live in. There are several Portuguese involved in these missions. With our eyes set on space, we contribute to the country's development, creating jobs and strengthening diplomatic ties. As explorers, we have new goals. By exploring other galaxies, we try to reach the sun. This is only the beginning. Our work and commitment will not stop. On the contrary, Portugal Space wants to reduce the space between us for the benefit of all. We create bridges, promote scientific research, innovation, technological advances. We unite sectors. We bring worlds closer together. We recover the spirit of the explorers, sharpen curiosity and the impetus to go beyond. We make space your space, our space, in a shared dream.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
It's such an inspiring video.
This
I'm
video is very
having-
important to talk about the bridge and to talk about the Mediterranean. I think the key word is cooperation. Cooperation in the space sector is strategic for the states. Is strategic for to achieve all the goals in that Maria talked before, and for the Mediterranean region in particular. Why not extend the cooperation to the Atlantic constellation? Why not? We have some organizations regarding this topic, the 5+5 dialogue. Why not extend the cooperation in this vector, the space vector? Okay, it's my proposal.
Of course, we need that. We really need that. Thank you so much for this very inspiring video. I had a goosebumps watching it actually, and it shows how space is very important for each of us every day, and for the prosperity of our continent, because it is a tool, but it is also a tool to cooperate and to do a lot of great things together as human beings. So I have another question for Ms. Maria Gabriela. And with your incredible experience in ESA and all the initiatives you've been taking
I know I'm
part of,
old.
about not only about SDGs, but I know you personally, so I witnessed a lot of things. What are the best practices that the European Space Agency can give to the incoming African Space Agency in terms of strategy? Africa is a bigger continent. We have 52 countries. And I know that you have 22 member states, but you guys inspire us. Honestly, personally, I'm always astonished by ESA and the things that were achieved, especially through cooperations. So how can we try to do the same, or maybe as 52 continents through the African Space Agency?
Well, precisely. I'm probably going to disappoint you because I think you should not do the same. I think, especially, you should do differently because precisely that's it. That's the whole point. Is the best practices, learn from our failure first, learn from what we did wrong in Europe, and do it better, because you can do it from scratch better.
Yes.
The African Space Agency, which is being hosted in Cairo, and I think the statuses of were signed this August, is, as far as I recall. It was in August, last August, 3 months ago. Really not a long time ago. I was following that, and I have a lot of hope. I have personally a lot of hope in what the African Space Agency is going to be doing, and don't do the same. I would say do it your way. Do it your way. Do it the African way, in the sense that you have a lot. I showed it in my slide at the beginning. It came from the African Development Bank. It's not from me on the map, but you have a lot of potential in Africa. Use this potential as well. And the first resource is the people. Use these people maybe to make things differently, better. And as well, for example, in areas which are hot topics today, so as I said, climate change, etc., using technologies which maybe are also being developed in Europe, which are hot topics in Europe as well, but which are not yet set, So typically don't always, my advice would be not, okay, let's build our launcher, infrastructures, etc. Maybe start with things which are very easily, like information technology, like, I don't know, AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, etc. These are things where you could capitalize. IoT, things where the investment is not so big. You can also, by partnering, because that's really the thing, get also probably join forces together, get maybe some budgets as well from organizations like I as far as I recall, when I was listening to the COP27, outcomes, the COP, which took place in Sharm el-Sheikh some days ago, I understood, looking again at the African Development Bank website, that 60-something million, 64 million maybe, are dedicated for African sustainable development energy technologies. So 64 million are going to be granted. And of course, they will be distributed through the African, even than 64 million? How much were okay, so sorry, maybe the number I read, or I don't recall the number, but better, 115, even better.
Amazing. Yes.
So that means that people believe in what you're doing, and we know that you can do it well from the start. So don't do our mistakes. Another thing you say on the strategy, I would say, as I said, the people, again, you are going to be the difference. STEM is of importance, so all the technologies, the scientific topics. And I would say more. I would say talk about STEM for women.
Yes.
So you girls who are sitting here, you are the future as well of Africa. I would like, as I'm here in Morocco, I want to put forth a figure, which I discovered, which is called Saïd al-Hurra. Ça veut dire en arabe, in Arabic means the free lady. the free lady. This woman existed in Tétouan in 1400 century, so almost the Middle Age. And she was the governor of Tétouan, which is a city here in the north, not very far from Tangier. She was the governor of a city in the Middle Age in Morocco for 30 years. And she was praised for her diplomacy, for her sense of intelligence, for her strategical views. So girls, this was in the Middle Age. Today, you can do the change. You can make the difference. So go on, girls.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maria Gabriela. So I have another question for General Legay, which is, please. Yes, 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 amazing. Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Islam. Thank you. I didn't realize, but wow. It's incredible. I'm very happy. So, General Legay, I know that you had an amazing experience also during your whole career regarding like your military background, but also the EU Satellite Center background, and now ESA. So, what are the best practices that ESA can give to the incoming space agency, African one, in terms of strategy, if possible, too, from a security point of view, especially?
So, Maria Gabriela, you gave already some inputs on that. Just to say, I would recommend a pragmatic approach, not big theory to create. First, it depends on your level, starting level. What is your current knowledge and capacities to start? But what is important, you cannot acquire all capacities in one single shot. You have to progress step by step, and for that to define priorities. Also, your budget will limit your ambition. Probably Europe is the case, and for all activities, we need some resources to define priorities. And to define priorities, what I want to do with space capacities. What are the policies you want to support, to serve? Agriculture, urban planning, defense, military as well. From these priorities, it's possible to define a roadmap, time frame to put in place the necessary capacities. Another important point, it's the case for the ESA, the European Space Agency, who are regularly speaking in the managers of ESA are speaking about the strategic autonomy. And this is also the question for the African Space Agency. What is the level of autonomy you want? Not to depend on non-African partners, or except if you want to cooperate on specific domains, yes, to define the domains of cooperation, but what you want to keep at your level, only for you, and not to share. Also for the African Space Agency, I don't know what, you have 15, 17 members at the moment, or member states. I don't know what is the last number, but also to see internally between the African space member states, how to share between you the skills, capacities, competencies. Just as an example, in Europe, for the Earth observation capacities, optical, a radar, for instance, France is more specialized in the optical systems, and Italy, Germany decided to have more capacities in radar, because they have a clouds coverage, etc. And we have an exchange of data, exchange of capacities in some situations. So it's also important to see this country will be specialized in this domain, this other one in another domain. I said in terms of cooperation, also important points between African countries, but also with the non-African partners. What is important, I said pragmatic approach, in terms first of training, education, knowledge, scientific knowledge, research, development. Very important is what you are doing today. For instance, we are sharing knowledge and competency to create this network at international level to acquire the capacities you consider missing at your level. And basically, this is my on-the-spot remarks about this
Thank
question.
you so much. It's very, very, very important to hear about your experiences. And lastly, how about you, Lieutenant Pedro Costa? I know that Portugal Space have been doing a tremendous, amazing work during the last years to develop its activities. How can we use your insight in Africa?
Well, I think the basis is, like General said, the training, the formation, to establish the base for everything. And then I propose make a dual approach, always civil and military for all the needs to society. I know when I speak and I use the word military is a strong word, but the needs are similar. Well, are some requirements different, but are similar needs. And when we talk about security, we talk about sustainability, we talk about prosperity, always, not just for the war. And military is not just for the war. So is my proposal is the Portuguese approach, make this approach in the space agency, join the requirements from the civil society and from the military branch, and building everything together with these requirements. This is my proposal.
Thank you so much. I would also like to highlight the fact that military is not only war, as you said, but it's more than that. During the COVID, for example, pandemic, if there wasn't any military, we would have had like worse cases in for example, in instance in Morocco, for example. So it's because of the military we can be secure and sure. And together, the security, exactly how Maria Gabriela is feeling now. But also, there is a lot of risks that can happen, especially through climate change. And if we don't have the support of the civil servants of the military, it's going to be hard to save lives. It's going to be hard to save lands. It's going to be hard to do a lot of things. So yes, thank you so much for your services. And that's true. Military is as important as civil. And thank you so much for the great insights and for this great panel that I enjoyed so much. And I'm honored to have you all here with me. So we will go for the questions. Of course.
First of all, my name is Ilham. I'm coming from Egypt. I would like to thank you all for the invitation first, and then for this very fruitful panelist. I will start from Iman. Thank you for speaking about climate change, because I'm just coming from the COP. And thank you for talking about the IPCC, because I'm one of the members of the IPCC, and I was very much happy to show that how much the Earth observation and satellites data can show us how to manage the planet and Africa, for example. And thank you for speaking about the Mediterranean, because the IPCC last report were talking about the Mediterranean as a hotspot for this. And we have a whole chapter talking about the impacts of climate change on the Mediterranean. And all basins are facing the same, we can say, the same impacts, but with some regional differences between the north and south. And thank you for Mr. General, because you are talking about the Copernicus, and I'm responsible for one of the East stations that deployed in my institution, and it's receiving Copernicus data, and we are using in academics and education and research as well. My comment for Maria, if you don't mind, and a question as well. Spirulina, you're talking about spirulina, and because of my background is biology, spirulina is not a bacteria, it's algae. And its high protein content is coming from the chlorophyll content, which is confirming that it's phytoplankton, which is algae, not bacteria. Sorry for this comment, but it's scientifically,
Thank you.
I have to.
No, you do well. You do
Thank you very much.
it still remains very rich. If it's
Yes,
not a
yes.
bacteria, it's an algae. You're
There is,
fully right, and it's still very, very rich in vitamin E and A, I think, and also proteins. Correct?
Yes, it
Okay.
is one of the food
And it's-
suppliers now.
And that's why we use it so much on the station.
Yeah,
because
I agree to you because you're speaking about this because this is one of the blue economy we are taking from the marine environment, and we are in Africa we are surrounding of water, and we have to get benefit from all the resources we have. I have a very small question for you because it's very important for me as a oceanographer. You're talking about the plastic pollution and how we can do management for this. I would like to learn from you, even in few words, how we can use the Earth observation to manage the plastic pollution. Are you talking about the coastal plastic pollution or the inshore or the offshore? And thank you again.
Thank you for your amazing questions.
Thank you, Professor. I was talking indeed, we have several initiatives within ESA using not only Earth observation to see where the plastic is located, but also some applications, with some nets so using both, together with the local populations, developing some applications to prevent the plastic of arriving on the shores, because that's the real problem as well, is really polluting all the beaches. As I said, my friend, who is professor in France, came here, and they are now putting in place something to really help the local population to prevent this from happening. What is being done, we are still at the beginning, I tell you the truth, but there are some projects. You can research them even on the SDG website I gave at SDG ESA, using Earth observation technology. It's more indeed for the shores, it's not in high seas or whatever. I think that's really what we are targeting. Maybe this is the first step, and might be a second step where we will be doing a mapping of all the little plastic, but it will be hard because they shift, of course, with the drafts and so on. So we are more looking at the ones located on the shores and polluting and ruining the everyday life of the people living on the coastal areas. That's really the first step. Second step will be indeed well, I think the zero step, even before the first step, would be to educate the people not to throw. Yeah, and this is going to be the real challenge in Europe, in Africa, everywhere in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much. So to wrap up, so we got incredible insights about how we can have cooperation together between EU, the European Union, and Europe in general, and Africa, as two entities that are so close. And I'm really, really looking forward to see what's going to happen in the coming decade, because I know that Africa is very, very dynamic now in terms of space capabilities with the agencies, with all the agencies, private actors, public actors, governments, and of course all the initiatives that have been between both continents, either if it's a geographical link or language link, or maybe even in terms of security. So thank you so much. I was very honored to take a part of your panel and to moderate it. Like, personally, I'm feeling very, very happy. And I'll let my colleague Farhan come. The floor is yours.
Thank you again. It's really, it was really inspiring, especially like the keynote speech earlier and also the discussion later on. Now we would like to move on with, we like to see like some application in what has been discussed earlier, especially the role of connectivity and digital devices and highly connected devices, also by Radim Batsi. He's going to give us a keynote speech. I'm also eager to learn more about geospatial satellite constellations, because we see a rising interest in low Earth orbit, but I'm curious to know more about geostationary constellations. So, welcome, Radim.
Hello, everyone.
1, 2, 3, 1. Oh, this one too? Okay, it's okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, you need internet?
I can actually. So, hi everyone. So I will start while the presentation is being prepared. So I would like to start by thanking the organizers for making this amazing event happen. I know it's been a lot of hard work, and I think they deserve a big thank you. And I have a message for all the participants actually. So if you look around you, these are the people who will be building the future of Africa in space with you. So I would very much encourage you after this event to stay in touch with them, to work together, to help each other when you need help with something, and if you have a good idea, make it happen. So. Okay, we're getting there. Well, I can start. Anyway, I'd like to talk about connectivity today. And many of us take connectivity for granted. Well, for example, on arriving here, like if you traveled from abroad, when you arrived at the airport, you could just like for a few dirhams, you could buy a SIM card that gives you connectivity to the whole world. Like that's. I mean, I think that's pretty amazing. It's fantastic. Sadly, this is not true for everyone, and especially. Yeah, it's working fine. Especially in Africa, like if you look at this map, there are a lot of people, unfortunately, don't have internet access. So, well, we can ask ourselves the question, like, why is this a problem? Well, it is a problem because internet connectivity has become absolutely essential today. So you need it for trade. You need it to access government services, education, healthcare. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you had to sign up online for this workshop if you were from one of these places where connectivity is unavailable. You couldn't have participated to this workshop. But this problem isn't really new, and it's not unique to Africa. So we've been working out how to achieve connectivity for many years, and in fact, at the beginning of the space era, telecommunication satellites were one of the very first applications. Humans like to communicate with each other. They see the value of having of being able to communicate over long distances. So the first communication satellites were actually primarily meant for transatlantic communications. before they got replaced in the late 80s by fiber optic transatlantic cables. Anyway, let's have a look at some of the technical aspects. So geostationary satellites have been the backbone of satellite communications for many decades. So those of you who don't know what a geostationary orbit is, it's simple. It's a special orbit that's, geostationary satellites travel about 38,000 kilometers above the equator. And so this special orbit means that they appear stationary in the sky. So this is, this has like several advantages. First of all, user terminals are inexpensive. This means like if you, you see it on many houses, satellite dishes that are pointed to a satellite doesn't cost a lot. There's another advantage. From that high up, you can actually cover about 1/3 of the Earth. So each geostationary satellite can cover very large distances, bridge gaps between continents. It's quite practical. So this was okay until quite recently, because we were using satellites mostly for what I would say passive communication, TV basically. That's what most traffic was. But like in the past 10-15 years, we've been seeing a transition from these passive applications to interactive ones, internet over satellite. And this is where the orbit of the satellite becomes a problem, because at 38,000 kilometers, you have a very high latency due to the speed of light, just the time it takes for the signal to reach the satellite, then go back to Earth. And this means that with a geostationary satellite, you will never be able to achieve the same level or the same quality of service as you would with ground infrastructure. It's very limiting, especially for video calls, for online education. But recently, like in the past 10 years, with the miniaturization of technology, we've been seeing the emergence of small satellites. So the idea is that instead of having one big geostationary satellite, we take several smaller, less capable satellites in a much lower orbit. This means that latency is lower. But of course, to provide good coverage, you need a lot of them. And some of the constellations that we've been seeing, you've probably heard of Starlink with hundreds or even thousands of satellites. And the user terminals are still kind of expensive, because you can no longer have a satellite dish pointed to a satellite. Now the antennas have to track the satellite flying above you in the sky. Just to give you some numbers, so there are 10,000 satellites scheduled to be launched in the next in the next 10 years. And so to put this in context, this is 5 times more than in the last 10 years. And most of these satellites are actually part of constellations. So there are several dozen projects. Let's say there are about 15 that are well funded. 2 constellations, Starlink and OneWeb, are actually being deployed. They have several hundred satellites in orbit today. And you can see like this is where clearly where we headed in the future. I'd like also to introduce the concept of hybrid networks. So this is something we've been hearing a lot lately. So the idea is to combine different technologies. So you could have geostationary satellites working together with low Earth orbit satellites. Like when you don't need low latency, you transfer data over geostationary satellite. Otherwise, you go over low Earth orbit. the idea is to use whatever is available to provide the service. What are some of the challenges? So I selected 4. The first one is obviously cost, because still, like even Starlink, I mean, it's pretty amazing, but still, you're talking about $50 or $100 per month. It's unfortunately it's unaffordable to the people who need them the most. Licensing. This is something that many people don't know about. These services are unavailable in many countries. I'm going to touch on that subject a little bit later. Space traffic management, space debris, and radio spectrum management. I'll also introduce this in a bit. So licensing. This is the current coverage of Starlink. So if you remember the first map I showed you, it actually, like you can see that Starlink is currently available in the places where internet connectivity is the best. So that's not so good for areas that actually don't have ground infrastructure. Why is that? It's mainly a question of licensing. Unfortunately, many national regulators are a bit reluctant to issue licenses to foreign satellite operators because telecommunications are still a strategic field. Space traffic management. You've heard about space debris. It's if we keep launching satellites without caring about where they end up once they are no longer operational, we're going to render the orbit unusable. And radio spectrum management. So this is one point that many people are not very familiar with, but it's becoming more and more of an issue. So it turns out the radio spectrum is a finite resource. All satellites have to share it. It turns out frequency allocations of different communication satellites share the same spectrum. So ground-based services use the same frequencies as well. And this is a bit of a problem. Because once we saturate the radio spectrum, it will become very difficult to actually provide a good quality of service. So this is also something to think about. And this actually allows me to briefly introduce ground space. So ground space specializes in making new space missions more efficient, more reliable. And one of the projects we've worked on recently is a system to detect and classify radio interference using machine learning for an operator of large constellation of satellites. And so I'd just like to show you some pictures of ground stations where we deployed this system this year to kind of show you the scale of ground infrastructure that's needed to operate satellite constellations. So this is in Svalbard near the North Pole, and you have Greenland, a few stations in the US. Yeah. Italy, and yeah, that's it. So in conclusion, we have the technology to provide connectivity all across the continent, but there are some issues: cost, regulatory, and how to make it sustainable. So my question to you, and I think we will address this in the working group tomorrow, is how can we address these questions? How can he solve these issues? Thank you. Is there time for a question?
Yes. Are there any questions, please? If there are any questions, please raise your hand. Okay, I have one.
I have a question about the resilience and reliability of the system.
Yeah.
Because you said something about the interference and jamming, because with war, and military applications for anti-satellite testing, I think by China and Russia. There could be questions about the vulnerability of communications via satellite systems, and also about radiation shielding of satellites, because you're trying to make satellite communication satellites smaller. But the thing is, you need more radiation shielding for debris and for solar flares.
Yes.
Thank you.
So to answer the first part of your question about intentional interference, we've been seeing quite a lot of it these days, and jamming of both commercial and military systems is becoming a major issue, and this is one of the areas actually where that we are focusing on, and the aim of our system to detect these sources and avoid them. To answer your question about radiation shielding, it's true. In practice, what we're seeing is that with the cost of satellites decreasing, operators are more and more willing to take bigger risks. And essentially, like if a satellite becomes broken, it gets replaced. It instead of over-engineering things, we just launch more often.
But it would add to the debris issue, because it would stay in orbit and would add more to the debris issue. So
yes.
So would there be an extended responsibility imposed onto manufacturers onto collection of debris and management of it?
My question to you would be, how would you enforce it? How would you force manufacturers to be responsible? And I think the space community is kind of wondering about these questions, because it's becoming extremely important.
Haven't you shown it in your presentation? I mean, you talk licenses, right? Licenses.
Yes.
The DoD and the American government has to give them actually a license that
Yes.
they can operate in space. France has implemented a law that everything that goes into space has to return. For me, it looks like enforcement. Maybe no one is actually looking after it.
How
That's
do
then
you,
two things.
Yeah. How do you enforce Chinese satellite operators to,
You have to start somewhere.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, actually, that's what we're trying to do by being a part of the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs, is to have some regulations and make more countries join us, because there is like the very old space treaty, and any country, like before launching anything to space, they are liable for anything that happens, whether on space or on land. So I guess like before any component makes it to space, it needs like authorization, as you said. Well, do you have any more questions? Yeah.
Do you have a business plan for sharing resources with African member states to make it easy and lower price for service providing to Africa?
Sorry, I didn't hear the.
Do you have a business model for sharing resources with African member states to offer the services at low cost and ease the process of regulatory and other stuff?
So, as far as we are concerned, we'd be very happy to cooperate with emerging space countries to provide adapted products and services. As for the operators, I hope they will.
I think in the overall, it's not only African that are concerned, it's all potential actors that want to have access to space is demanding for a very low cost, because we want all to go to space, as from space we can benefit a lot for downstream application, all downstream as described previously by Gabriela. So what I would like to say is that there is a trend today, because we see more and more actors, startups, thanks to the startups, we see a real challenge on the cost of the access to space. And in fact, our mission in the member state, and I think Portugal will confirm, is that we are now trying to accelerate, also support the initiative of the startup on top of our willingness to have a guaranteed access to space, because you know that any country wants to have the sovereignty of access to space, and it's becoming more and more. There are more and more countries that have sovereignty, and I wish it would be the same as well for Africa to have the sovereignty for access to space. But what I would like to say at least is that we are supporting a lot of private initiative so that to decrease the cost of access to space. And I think this will help you to have more opportunities to negotiate and have better price to go in space.
Thank you for this insightful information. Well, I think.
Thank you.
In the name of the organizing team, I would like to thank you so much, Radim, for the amazing support you've been giving us, not only by sponsorship, but by your positive vibes, positive words, always here to support us and to just bring the sparkle to us. So we have prepared for you a small gift.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. So here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, Moroccan sweets.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, next. I think we're not going to have a break. We're a bit late. Well, following on the commercial aspects and the startup, we have Dr. Farid Gamgami, Chief Strategy Officer from also Space Project Management and System Engineering expert. And he's going to talk about a handbook for commercial space in Africa.
Iman, please, can you come? Okay.
So, Assalamu alaikum. Dear colleagues, dear friends, I'm very happy to be here, very glad to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you very much. The event managers did really a great job. I thought it's actually a very small event. Then I was positively surprised by the other guests and colleagues I haven't seen for quite some time. So really glad to be here and to talk about space project management and systems engineering. So I was last week in Vietnam at the Asia Pacific Regional Space Agency Forum, long name. And when I came back, my colleagues told me it was an exhausting trip and you should relax and you should not go to Rabat. I said definitely no. And now I destroyed it. Okay. Yeah, I think it's not. And I'm very happy and I definitely don't regret coming. Okay. I will take a different approach to this topic and you will see why I'm taking this different approach. So giving a keynote talk, 15 minutes about space project management and systems engineering is definitely an Hercules task. Thank you, Iman. It was my first idea, first thought. So this is Hercules, that's me, and we're definitely not equal. So don't expect this Hercules task. So what approach should I take? I thought the talk is in the afternoon. I could now summarize some textbooks, give you, bombard you with information, what to take care of. But as I said, I've taken a different angle. So feel free to talk later to me about specific issues of project management. I already started with Professor Islam about the importance of a critical item list, actually, for long lead item procurement and control of project management. But I will not talk about this today because it's a vast topic. So on the one side, we have systems engineering characterized by the V model of design, development, and verification, which I will not talk about. And on the other side, we have got project management and all the different specific tasks of project management that are actually to 90% applicable to any project. Could be a bridge, could be a power plant, could be a spacecraft. So I will not dive into that either. But because both are very broad fields and they require dedicated lectures. But my hypothesis is these two subjects, systems engineering and project management, they have some crucial points in common. So same, but different. And I have selected my personal 7 best practices. So I'm not telling you what you can find in a textbook, the importance of stakeholder expectations. Keep your customer happy, be close to your customer. That's not what I'm telling you today. This you find in other textbooks. I will tell you something about my personal 7 best practices. So, the Magnificent 7. I was told I have to have a story so people can follow, are entertained, and will keep what I'm saying in mind. It's a great movie based actually on a Japanese movie, The 7 Samurais. So, but both are great. As a cineast, I needed to take that. Let's start. First, very simple, but we do simple, but by ignoring simple things, we do huge mistake. First of all, you work with humans and not with machines. So what I've observed is that the social aspect is very often ignored, right? You have a task, you want the task to be done, you approach someone, please do this and that. I said, please, should be sufficient, please, so go on. So don't underestimate the power of socializing with the team to be powerful. And I think the Lieutenant Colonel will definitely support this idea and say, in order to have a powerful team in the military, you have really to form a corps spirit, right? So there are analogies. The other point is when I say you work with humans, don't assign tasks that are over the head of a respective person. So assign tasks according to the qualification of the people. This is extremely, extremely important. Otherwise, people will get frustrated, and in the end, they will underperform. Next best practice, talk to people. So you work with people. Now you would say, okay, of course I do talk to people. That's what you just said. Well, in the first place, I said you have to socialize and to form a spirit, okay, to be powerful. And now I'm saying you should talk to people. So what do I mean? What you very often have is you will have a document management system, right? Very important. We can talk now for hours how important it is to do configuration management, documentation management, and how to do a server structure, and so on and so forth. Again, this is what you find in textbook. Textbook will not tell you that in the end, you have still to convey the idea to people, okay? So that's outside the textbook. Very important. I have very often encountered the situation where after 2 weeks, myself, another colleague asked, where is this and that we talked about? Well, I put it last week on a server. Didn't you get the issue? Didn't you get the note? Or didn't you look it up? So very important, really. Talk to people. It makes a big difference. Not only that the stuff is done, where the stuff is, but also what you have done, okay? So don't paralyze people with meetings. Give them space to make progress. Otherwise, you will have something like that in the kitchen. We had it very often in our kitchen. So you're lonely, you're tired of working. Why not having a meeting? Okay, you can be important, point with a stick. Nowadays, it's a laser pointer, right? So once you see these in the kitchen, it's a sign you should react. Or you see cups like this one, right? Survived another meeting that should have been an email. So someone talked a bit too much, right? Good. Let's move on. Avoid micromanagement. Again, sounds like common sense, right? But the mistake is done every day because the other do the mistake. I don't do the mistake, right? I don't do micromanagement. Other people do. Okay, my wife told me, don't show this picture. But I said, come on, darling, they have to remember something. The only thing they remember, Farid showed something about Hercules and told us Hercules is a project manager. That's important. But it's not only doing something like this here, micromanagement like that. It's also what Steve Jobs said, right? So you have to give the people the freedom to be creative. And what is most important to me is you have to accept that the result will be different than if you have done it yourself. I think this is the most important. So very often I have encountered the supervisor saying, while reviewing the job, saying, I would have done it differently. My first reaction is, shut up. Okay. Of course you would have done it differently, as I would have done it differently. But since you haven't given them any further guideline, right, how the work is supposed to be done or what is further important, just let the people do. The work was done. It's 80% of your expectation. It will never be 100% of expectation because it's not a clone of you, right? Go on. 80% is great, right? And accept different results. I think this is another aspect to micromanagement, hampering creativity of people that should definitely be prevented. Start top down. Now it's a bit more technical. If you do project management or systems engineering, think always from the end. Extremely important. Could be even something like export license. You just started with a project. You don't even have got one connector. You don't have one bolt, right? You have some draft designs. As a project manager, you have already to think launch, export license, backwards, do backwards your schedule. And don't be distracted by the, let's say, actual engineering work. So you always have to have the global picture in mind. At the same time, of course, you work bottom up. And this is a balance that you have to keep. But very often I have seen mistakes in project management because people did not think enough top down, which means you are dealing with issues that could become a problem the day after tomorrow. Right? So you're always thinking into the future. Okay? Like a good football midfield player, since the World Cup is going. So be like Iniesta or Özil or so think into the future, always 2 step into the future. Bother your people with stuff that could become a problem, right? Where you have to set the ground right now. Otherwise, you will run into a situation where you are just Feuerlöscher. Yeah, genau. Yes, where you're just dealing with fire right and left, and you're barely managing your project. So, and the important is you do your regular checks. And some tension, of course, is to be expected within your team. Okay, this is one of my favorites. Be mentally fault tolerant. This here is coming from crew resource management, CRM. It's very important in aviation. It was developed actually in aviation. And it's the so-called Swiss cheese model. And it shows you that you can implement each of these cheese layers is actually a technical layer that prevents a failure of your system. But as you can see above, you cannot prevent every failure. And you can think of that also as humans, right? You cannot prevent every failure. Some failures will be not recognized, and this is going to happen. So what does it mean? The important thing is admit your failure. So you have to have a sound failure culture in your company, and the modern definition of culture is not what is actually understood on the street. So the culture within a company like Mercedes-Benz is very different than a company like BMW, even though they are 2 German companies, right? Things like how you deal with failures. Don't punish failure. It's important then to solve the situation and actually be prepared of the fact that something is going to fail. Then you're good. Okay, last but not least, we said the 7th rule, you work with humans, you have to talk to people. Too many meetings are not good, paralyzing people. I've seen companies with 60% of meetings, right, per employee. It's way too much. Avoid micromanagement, start top down, be mentally fault tolerant. And the 7th rule, you have to keep the balance. And of course, it's very easy to keep the balance with this here. So you are working with humans, but you have to set challenges at the same time. You talk to people, but nonetheless, you have to have an efficient document management system without fully relying on it, without talking to anyone. You have to have meetings to keep the people informed. You have to do, you should not do micromanagement, but some employees need more guidance than other employees. Start top down, but you have to stay realistic and to do your checks. Mentally fault tolerant, but you have to scrutinize errors. Yes, so that was my last slide. I hope I stayed in time. These are my personal 7 best practices for project management systems engineering. If you want to go into more detail, textbook-like, then let's have a chat during the coffee break. Thank you.
All right, any questions, please? All right.
Hello, sir. First of all, thank you so much for being among us today. I'm so proud and honored to be among us, all of us, dear presence. Well, my question is about team management. Well, basically, I'm the president and the founder of a club here at UAIR. It's called Automoto. And we're working basically on too much projects at the same time. Sometimes this makes some trouble in deadlines. That's why the question is it important respecting deadlines or much the quality of the work done during these deadlines, for example? Hope my question was clear.
Tough one. Deadlines or quality? I'm sorry, that's the burden of a project manager. You have to keep both. There's no other way. If that's absolutely, your goals have to be smart, specific, measurable, actionable, right, realistic, chairmanable. Yes, but and you should not aim for too high. So this is at the beginning of the project. You have to be realistic. What can we really achieve? It should be also challenging, of course, right? But then I didn't say that the project manager, he or she, is going to be everybody's darling. Actually, especially internally, and you see my 7 points were rather internal into the team. It is definitely a tough task because you have to challenge as well as to foster at the same time. So no compromise. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much for the interesting presentation. It was light and easy to follow. I have a question about the technical background you need to have as project management. Project manager, do you think that it is a must for a project manager to have like enough technical background about the project that he's running to be able to manage the tasks and the team?
Yes, very good question. And I was even thinking about having a dedicated slide to this, but then I had to respect the time limit, of course. But good you asked it. I said project management has got so much in common if you're doing a nuclear power plant, aircraft, or a satellite. If you look into, again, textbook-like, they are the same elements will be written there. So could we exchange these people simply? And I would say definitely not. I think as long as it's not corporate management, right? If you're not managing a company, but a project, a technical project where also even development is needed, aircraft carrier, then you should have definitely a good understanding of the technology. So it's not uncommon that systems engineers become later project managers. That's really not uncommon, but they have, of course, the burden to not think anymore as systems engineers and let others do the work and concentrate on project management. So yeah, there must be a balance, and I would say they need to be knowledgeable about the technology. So I've met project managers, different companies. My company, old company, OHB or Thales Alenia, French company. There, the project managers were usually engineers, had an engineering background, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer. But at a certain point, they took the decision to go into the project management, which I think is a very good path to do.
All right, we're going for the last question. I think we had it here.
Thank you for the thorough presentation. I will certainly remember that the images that were there, and I certainly appreciate the courage to go out of convention and include those. I spoke to you personally, and I'm very glad I did in the coffee break, but I didn't really get to know you that much until now. One question I have, and I will take the chance to kind of put it into context, because I've founded a company towards the beginning of last year, and it's a small company, and I have to manage multiple projects, so I have to wear a few hats as the owner and CEO, although that's a self-given title. My question really here is, as someone who has a lot of pressure on their back, and at times I have to, manage multiple projects at the same time, how can I be fault tolerant? Because you said be mentally fault tolerant, and it's not exactly a human nature to be fault tolerant, because obviously you want to be perfect at all times, which is not realistic. But how can I, as a leader, as a manager, be fault tolerant and not let my stress and the pressure that's on my back fall into my team? Because I know that as people we're different, and that's going to hinder their performance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was also my pleasure to meet you and talk to you. And again, when I look into the audience and I hear these two examples, I'm highly impressed. And I'm talking to the future of African space leaders. So don't forget me. No, highly impressed. Really good. I just talked to Radim and asked him, gosh, our study time was boring, right? So you're doing a lot next to your studies. It's a different generation, and we really admire what you're doing, and we love to give you any support we can. And now to your question. I think it's remarkable, the self-reflection you have just given, right? You're feeling this pressure. You don't want to give the stress to the team. You don't want to, flow down the stress. I think this is really remarkable, and this is how a company leader actually talks. And I think this is really good, and I think you're on a good path. Regarding being fault tolerant, my advice is try to think of a plan B. So again, if I say expect a failure, then it should be a bit of theoretical concept in your mind that motivates you to think of a plan B, right? You pursue plan A, but you already have got plan B in mind. If you manage this balance, then that's the Zen status.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your questions. Oh, is there a last one? Okay, last one. Sorry. Very, very last one.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for your presentation. That was very interesting. and it came in the perfect time because I was dealing with a problem in the association I'm in, and I was the project manager of a whole event. And right now, I'm in a situation as to what you can say conflict management, or when you're dealing with ethical dilemmas, either with your team or with the attendants or apprentices that you're given the event to, for instance, as well as the collaborators. So how do you deal with all of this and at the same time keep the goal between your eyes and deal especially with the ethical dilemmas? Am I clear?
Ethical dilemma is a wide field. Do you mean personal issues among the team?
Yes,
like
personal
egos and
issues.
so on.
Yes,
right?
personal issues. For instance, if two people of your team and they're very essential for the team's work, they're having an issue between them, and you can't possibly like choose. I wouldn't say choose, but you're trying to be as objective as you can. But sometimes it's just too difficult. So how can you deal with this?
Okay, I could simply say refer to my first rule, but I think you have done that already. So yeah, you have to bear in mind certain constellations don't work simply, and I've observed that, and also myself. So we're all human beings. We have to accept that certain constellations with people will not work. So once you have figured out the right constellation, you have an extremely powerful team that can do amazing things. But I think even though it sounds negative, I think one has to bear in mind that certain constellation of persons, just due to different reasons, right, they don't work like that. In different constellations, they work perfectly.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna have like a very short coffee break, so we'll be back. I don't know, 5-10 minutes. We have 6 speeches and 2 panels remaining, and we'll try to squeeze them within the time frame of 2 hours if possible. So see you in a bit.